there's a lot of inspiration that comes in art of all forms, and various things can affect your art. And SIO, we're a tabletop gaming channel, and Bradley, you have contributed significantly to the music side of that. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and you help us make this channel as awesome as it is. But the point of this interview is I want to dive into, how do you think about storytelling through your art?
I don't. No, on a serious note, like when I'm writing music or lyrics or both, all I'm really thinking about is how to elicit, an emotion. I'm drinking beer, I'm burping. That's what happens when you drink beer.
We both are.
So you know what? I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just going to burp and say, excuse me. Maybe excuse me is an apology, but whatever. Anyway, I don't think about a story necessarily. Sometimes with certain tracks I do. I'll touch that in a second, but for the most part, I really think about how can I best elicit the emotion that I want someone to feel when they're listening to it, you know? And that comes through like different types of musical, like there's connotation within music, you know? Everybody knows dun 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 dun, right? That has a fucking connotation. You don't just hear that and think, oh, it's pretty. Mm-hmm. It has like years and years of meaning packed into it. So you use that as a tool to say something specific, right? And so when you're writing and you're trying to elicit an emotion, like I'm saying, you kind of touch on those tools, use them as best you can, and then you use the lyrics to really drive the point home. And that's really what I think about when I'm writing a song. Less about storytelling, more about how can I elicit an emotion. Now, in some cases, it's fantastic to tell a story through music because music does happen over time. A great example of my own music, in my opinion, that does tell a good story, and you know, the story keeps you interested through the tune just as much as, you know, the music kind of does. If you're building the music, yeah, maybe that holds your attention, but lyrics, I think, is what most people listen to. And when you've got a good story with a solid hook, Bender's Agenda is the song that I'm talking about. So in that song, definitely there's a story element. And so, you know, there's little devices you can use, like talking. I like to talk about the senses, because when you're putting words on paper, the best way to make someone get into that feeling, which is, like I said, what I think about when I'm writing, is to talk about their senses, because that's how we perceive the world, right? That's our, that's how we perceive the world. So I'll talk about, you know, in that song specifically, you know, the wind in his hair. So that's a feeling. Everybody knows what wind in your hair feels like. The sun setting. So that's a visual that everyone's familiar with. The taste on his breath has a little bit of bite from the crown, right? So everybody knows what that, you know, everybody knows what taste is. Mm-hmm. Hopefully not everyone knows what crown tastes like, but, you know, using things like that to really bring out kind of like, it just kind of pulls a listener into the character. And then if you're telling a story, they're part of the journey at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, so, I mean, eliciting emotional reactions through music, in my opinion, is some form of storytelling, isn't it? Because in that case, you're telling more of a story from your own perspective, and you're trying to elicit an emotional reaction based on what you want the audience to feel. And a lot of the times when people write music and they write lyrics, it's from some level of personal story, isn't it?
Yes, I think that's a good point. I've actually never thought about it like that. You're right. I guess when I'm writing a song, now that you're chalking me up to a finite sentence and all my work into one sentence, I guess I am trying to take my struggles and make someone else understand where I'm coming from. And a lot of times, you know, most of the time I would say it totally changes based on trying to get someone else into that story. So at the end of it, I don't really feel like it's a story anymore. Or especially, I certainly don't think it's my story anymore, but you're right. I'm trying to pull someone into that feeling, which I guess is kind of a story, you know? Yeah, because emotions are transient, right? So they're not they're not constant.
Right.
They change. So I guess they are kind of stories in themselves, even.
Well, I think a great example of a song you wrote that Rogues adopted was "No Cause for Concern."
Oh yeah.
And every time I listen to that song, it paints a picture in my head. It is a story to me. There's clearly an arc and a conflict and a drive, and it moves somewhere.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with elaborating, like, maybe what you were going for when you were writing that tune?
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely having some struggles. I was struggling, you know, with my version of reality and my place in the world and just how I felt about myself mostly, which is, I think, a constant throughout most of my music. But I think I hit the nail on the head at that point because I was really feeling it and because of the devices I used, you know?
I think, I guess, so you were painting a picture of your personal experiences through No Cause for Concern.
For sure. And
I think it came off really well. Like,
yeah, I remember I wanted the end to be hopeful, you know? And that's not necessarily something I saw at that moment, but I didn't want it to be like, you know.
Yeah, but you were envisioning that it could go somewhere.
Exactly. And then so I think that journey was particularly really cool because, you know, each verse was like fucking negative as shit, and then the last verse was kind of like, there is light, you know? And I don't know.
So is there any like pieces of work outside of your own work that you feel is a great example of storytelling through music?
Yeah, a lot. My first example is the Mars Volta Acilis Magdalena. I fucking love that. If you know me, you know I fucking love that song. And I don't even know what the story is. I understand the lyrics. I know a little bit of Spanish. It's all in Spanish. And so I understand what he's saying, and I've studied the lyrics, so I know for sure what he's saying, but I don't understand what he's saying at the same time. So it's not the language barrier, it's actually the poetry that I struggle to wrap my head around what he means, right? But the music is pretty clear. Like, to me, in that song, you have this beautiful classical guitar opening with these dissonant chords, these diminished chords, and it's just beautiful and kind of like still, and even the mixing and the orchestration, it just starts like vocals in one guitar, right? And then it builds from there, and like absolutely at the end it's almost not even tonal anymore because there's so many different effects, there's layers of guitars, and it's kind of chaotic. And to me, it just builds to that point, and then that's kind of like, from my perspective, kind of a demon taking over the main character. And at that point, you know, the main character no longer exists, and it ends. It doesn't really have a hook. It has verse 2, verse 2, verse 2, right? And then the last part is repeated like 3 or 4 times, and that's kind of a hook. But then after that, it's just kind of chaos. And I always feel like, you know, that repeated line is probably his point. And he's just being, whatever character is being taken over by some kind of darkness or entity or something.